Okay, let's open in a word of prayer. Lord, thank you for this beautiful day. We pray that you'll bless our time together and always help us to keep in mind that it's your return that we're looking forward to someday. Bless us today in Jesus' name, amen. Well, so today I'm going to call this artificial generative intelligence. I know that when I get this one done, I get to go home and have Pam Howler pot roast. So that's a very good thing, and we're going to have our 48th anniversary this week. So my reward, I guess, her gift to me is pot roast, and my gift to her is eating it. So, and loving it. So she makes phenomenal pot roast. Well, we're going to talk about a few issues today. Some of the stuff I'm not going to cover. We'll save it for another update. But we talk about the convergence of events. This is my grid that I use: acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. Things are going to happen very quickly as we get closer to the return of the Lord. There's going to be a convergence. A lot of different things are going to be happening all at the same time. There's also, though, a logistics aspect that we have to talk about. Like, for example, in Ezekiel 38:39, it talks about a great company and a mighty army. And the question is, what does that really mean? And is it 50,000 people? Is it 100,000? Is it 2 million? That remains to be seen. And then it also, as we get closer, there will be an understanding, as it says in Daniel. It says it in Daniel 11, also in Daniel 12. Daniel writes, "And I heard, but I understood not. Then I said, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand." And in Daniel 11, it says that the wise will understand and instruct many. So we want to be people that are part of this group that are wise. This is a graphic I've just developed recently to kind of explain how I think the horsemen, the seals are broken, the horsemen ride out, and what you see sort of a gradual unfolding of what is associated with that particular horseman, and they're all kind of riding at the same time, and things go sort of exponential. The curve of things happening gets very steep, and I think that's a pretty good picture. So let me there's a lot of places to go, but this is the University of Colorado at Boulder. Supposedly a prestigious institution, and they have a whole portion of their website at a thing called the Center for Inclusion and Social Change, Division of Student Affairs, and talking about pronouns, what pronouns are. I don't know if you saw recent reports this week that the State Department started sending out emails and attaching pronouns to everybody's email. And some State Department people, this is the kind of people you really want working for the government in a sensitive category, place like that, like the State Department that deals with international affairs. When they saw that their pronoun was not correct, they needed counseling. That's not a good sign. There's been a lot of controversy this week about Target. I only have a series of graphics all about the same thing. Of course, it's Pride Month. You're going to see, this stuff is going to be shoved in your face for the next month. It's already starting. So Target rolled out a bunch of Pride, gay Pride, or as I have a video someplace, I'm not going to play it, of Baby Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, talking about, there's some people sort of accosting him at an event recently, and I think it was in Winnipeg where we were recently, and he would say, well, we need to respect the LGBTQSIA plus or whatever. I mean, and he says it like it's just rolling off the tip of his tongue. And I think the follow-up question would be, what does that really mean, Baby Trudeau? I don't think he would be able to answer. But Target, all these corporations are really pushing this, I call it the alphabet mafia agenda. Maybe that's the way to say it and get around the censors. But so Target hired a guy, and he is a admitted Satanist and trans. And so this is, now I don't know if this was sold in Target, but this was on his website. Now he took the website down for a while because he was getting a lot of heat. Now he comes out and he says, this is like, you don't know whether it's true or propaganda. I mean, he's a Satanist. I suppose we could believe what he says, right? But this is a pen that he sells on his website. You see the skulls, you see the heart, you see the guillotine. Here's another couple versions of it. And this is the guy in the name there on the left. I don't really want to say it. Above the guillotine is the name of his website. The last I looked, it was back up. But he was getting a lot of heat. And this is the guy who somebody at Target thought it was good to go to sell his stuff. And some of it's like goat heads. I mean, clear satanic stuff that's being sold. And Target's moved it, removed it in some places. But I would suggest, if you all have a stomach for it, go to Target, go to the children's section or the bathing suit section, and see what they have. By the way, they were selling female bathing suits for guys that had a tucking feature. You know, it's hard to stand up here in a church and describe what's really going on out there at times, because one, people won't believe it, or two, it's so disgusting that you don't want to share it. But I think we need to understand a little bit about this is where the culture is. And this month, I'm just telling you, it's going to be shoved in your face like it never has been before. Here's another pen that he's made up. And I'm not sure the significance behind the headrest thing is that like a mermaid or something? I don't know. It's hard to say. Well, there is a thing. I covered this a bit last week. I got some graphics from David Fiorazo when I was at Stand Up for the Truth, or he referred me to a website. The censorship industrial complex, and I'm not so sure it shouldn't be called the disinformation industrial complex, because everything you say, if you disagree with them, is disinformation. So everything I say would be considered disinformation or a conspiracy theory. But I'm just telling you what they say. So they have all these different organizations. These are for-profit organizations. I talked a lot about Moonshot CVE about a year and a half ago. And it was about a year, almost 2 years ago in July, the Department of Homeland Security, or FBI, put out a thing about watching out for white supremacy. So everything that you've seen happen with regard to the protests in Washington back in 2021 has been to build a narrative. And so Moonshot CVE talks about building the narrative. All of these companies talk about building the narrative. There's academic initiatives, automated controversy detection, Information Futures Lab at Brown University, Annenberg Public Policy Center, the Aspen Institute, Technology and Social Change Project. And all of these, when you dig into their websites, go to their websites, look at what they're oriented to. They are oriented against people that are conservatives. Everybody who is a conservative is an extremist or on their way to becoming an extremist. So what they did back in 2021 was they put out this tweet, and they took pages from the Islamic Terror Initiative and Terror Watch the Department of Homeland Security and FBI were running, and they took those images and they then applied them to white supremacists. Because they're building a narrative. You need to understand, everything is a narrative. Also, if they're on the left, you can pretty much, in anything that they accuse you of, they're doing. So, for example, I was watching, I don't like coffee, so, to get my shot of adrenaline in the morning and get going, sometimes I'll turn on MSNBC and watch the lunatics there on Morning Joe. And they had on Claire McCaskill. How did a person like this I think she was governor of Missouri for a while and served in the U.S. Senate. How is this possible that a person that's this detached from reality? So they were talking about DeSantis announcing that he was going to run for president as a Republican. And she said, yes, DeSantis is emblematic of everybody on the other side of the aisle who play the grievance and victim card. What? The people on the right do that? So in other words, what they accuse you of is what they're guilty of or what they're doing. And it's just a rule of thumb. There's certain rules of thumb that you can apply to things in the world, like on foreign policy. Germany is always wrong, pretty much. There's a big article yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, I haven't had a chance to read it, saying that, a lot of this Ukraine-Russia thing really can be laid at the feet of Angela Merkel. Maybe it can be, I don't know. But so they have these, so this is this report, the Censorship Industrial Complex. You see this Aspen Institute, Integrity Initiative, Institute for Strategic Dialogue, Alliance for Securing Democracy. And if you start digging into them, this is from the ISD, the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, you immediately become like everything that they're talking about, the Hydra on the web, challenges associated with extremist use of the Fedverse. Okay, researching involving online ecosystem, Telegram, Discord, and Odyssey, which are the channels that a lot of us recommend that people use because you can speak truth there, Rumble and that type of thing. And you don't get censored. But it's all the people, everything that the right does or conservatives do is bad. Bad, 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 bad. And so the whole thing is about building the narrative. So here in the upper right-hand corner, inside the digital labyrinth, right-wing extremism, strategies of decentralization on the internet, and possible countermeasures. And there's a whole complex set up to do this. So Durham comes out with his report, and he says the FBI did all of this. But we're not going to prosecute anybody. And so a lot of people, so MSNBC, they get on the air and they go, see nothing in the Durham report, nothing to see, nothing to pay attention to. Let's go after DeSantis now. And that's what they do. And they never look at what happened. Now we're finding out that with regard to the Clinton Foundation, and it was the Clinton campaign that sort of dreamed up this crossfire hurricane thing that really crippled Trump in the years of his administration, his term. And the people behind the Clinton Foundation, when they were caught, they destroyed the evidence. The FBI was able to get some of the evidence, but what did we find out this week? The FBI's destroyed the evidence now. So there's corruption on an epic scale. Here's another think tanks. Oh, these are think tanks. I already talked about those. So censorship industrial complex. So let's look at what that means in terms of some things that were going on this week. So this was in the New York Post the other day. DHS dollars to GOP haters grant to college. So what they did was they gave grants to different colleges, including some chucklehead down at the University of Cincinnati or University of Dayton, who you can go look him up. He is a complete leftist, activist, protester, all of these things, that hates anybody who's conservative, and he gets a grant from the government to figure out how to deal with people who spout conservative views. And I don't know if it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so the part of it was based on an article that was at Bryn Mawr College called Understanding Political Radicalization, the Two Pyramids Model. So as reported by the New York Post and other websites this week, this is what they did. They came up with a pyramid as to how people are radicalized. So this is from their own documents. This is what Department of Homeland Security is using as a grid, like my grid for acceleration, convergence, understanding, and logistics. They have a grid for understanding how people become radicalized. So at the top of the pyramid, they put these small groups, but then they say, well, this is the people come in up here because they started here. Now look at this pyramid. So down at the bottom of the page, you have sort of the base of the pyramid, the Heritage Foundation, Fox News, American Conservative Union Foundation, CBN, the Republican Party, the Tea Party, and National Rifle Association. And that's where it all begins, folks. And then when they start to get more radical, they go to Breitbart, Turning Point USA, MAGA, InfoWars, Turning Point USA, and the most dangerous of all, Prager University. This is so egregious. And now they're starting to use artificial intelligence to go into this. It's pretty troubling. They're also taking artificial intelligence and they're going to organizations like this one, the WHO. And when I talk about WHO, it sounds like a Abbott and Costello routine. Who is a problem? Who is a problem? Who? No, who is a problem? Who? And so you go back and forth. And who is a problem? And even in the Daily Telegraph, which is hardly a right-wing newspaper, they were talking about the fact this week that the powers that they're bringing about for themselves could force the United Kingdom into lockdown. Big problem. They're making amendments to the WHO treaty. I don't know that the WHO treaty itself has been completely changed, but Michelle Bachmann and some others have been in Geneva at their meetings this past week, and there was I'll spare you the thing, but Tedros, the head of who was a known terrorist, by the way, the head of the WHO has come out and said that something worse is coming than what we've just dealt with for the last few years. Something more deadly. And then you layer on top of that, like the guy in Indonesia at that big summit they had earlier this year where he said, well, we just need to get a passport. And, if you get the state-approved treatment, you can move around. We don't want to shut everybody down, but you have to get the digital passport in order to be able to move around. So that's a problem. And I think it's only going to get worse. Well, let me talk about, there were some good decisions at the Supreme Court this week. For example, in the United States, what constitutes navigable waters of the United States it doesn't seem like it would be controversial, but there was a couple, I think the case that ended up in the Supreme Court, the people at the Supreme Court or in California wanted to build a home on land that they own, but they said, well, there's a ditch here and sometimes there's water in the ditch. Therefore, the ditch contains navigable waters of the United States and you're subject to our regulation and you can't build. Now, I know it seems silly, but that's the way it's been interpreted. But fortunately, I think the decision might have been, I think it was 5-4. There was also a decision on the IRS seizing somebody's property. A lady owed back taxes. They came in and seized her house. She owed $15,000 in taxes, and the property was worth, I think, around $50,000. And IRS just said, well, we can take a little bit of it, so we can take the whole thing. And the Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision this week, said, no, IRS, you cannot do that. So there is, every now and then, there's a little bit of semblance of reality that kind of, that seeps into things. This also came out. Wall Street has a doomsday playbook. It's been pretty dry this spring, at least here in Ohio. And when we were out west, we ran into people who are associated with farming and agriculture, and they said it's pretty dry out there. And even though they might be getting rain this year, it's not going to help the crops this year. So there were reports in the news yesterday and today that I think in The Economist, that Africa is going to have a major food problem this year. So we're sort of at the beginning of really bad things with regard to food. I think you're going to see a lot of inflation, and I think people need to make reasonable steps to prepare in some fashion because, let me just say a little bit about artificial intelligence. We know that in artificial intelligence,
the first two applications we're going to aim for in human.
This is the presentation that Neuralink did a couple of months ago. There were reports that Neuralink had a lot of animals die in testing. You should know that Thursday or Friday, whoever is the regulatory body gave Neuralink the authority to go ahead with human trials. This is Elon Musk Association. And the reason I bring it up is because I think this artificial intelligence is important. I think it will have an impact in the future. I think it does play into Bible prophecy, because it talks in Revelation about he gives life to the image of the beast. And what does that mean? How do we unpack that? How do we understand that? And how's that going to play out? But then there's also, when I was in Israel back in December, they had a business guy get up and he was talking about ChatGPT 4, because this had just come out. This is going to be a tremendous thing. And we're going to use artificial intelligence, and this is exactly the words that he used. We are going to make the lame walk. I almost fell off my chair because we know that Satan is a great imitator. So whatever Jesus did, Satan, this pseudo-Christos, Antichrist, as we call him, is going to imitate Jesus. And when John the Baptist sent his disciples to Jesus and said, "Are you the one, or should we look for another?" What did Jesus say were the confirmatory messianic signs? That he said, "You just stay here and watch. The blind see, the deaf hear, the lame walk." And when you look at this presentation of Neuralink, you sort of saw it there. It's almost in that exact same order as this is what this company is going to do through artificial intelligence and a brain chip. And so I think it plays into this coming person who's going to imitate the work of Jesus in these messianic signs. And so this week they got the authority to go ahead. Speaking of disinformation, this is, somebody put this up, war, famine, pestilence, death, and the fifth horseman propaganda. that's coming.
Welcome to BBC Verify.
Okay, this is a BBC video that was put up. It says here, BBC has unveiled BBC Verify to address the growing threat of disinformation and build trust with audiences through transparency. The BBC's disinformation correspondent, Mariana Spring, had more details. And here's what she said. By the way, if you notice down there, the poll lady put out a poll. Will you trust BBC Verify? Not doing so well right now. It's about 95% no. Anyway, so listen to what she says.
Welcome to BBC Verify. Like you said, we are a team of investigative journalists here at the BBC. We are also a new brand, and we are a physical location above the newsroom in London. And the point of the team, as you said, is to verify video, to fact check, to counter disinformation, and to analyse really complex stories so we can get to the truth of what's going on. Why does this matter? Well, mistruths can cause really serious harm to society and to the people in them. And so we want to show you our workings and really help you understand how we get to the bottom of what's happening. And I'm going to give you a bit of a flavour of the kind of work that the team are doing. So we're able to look at maps to geolocate specific situations, stuff that's going on. This is just a map of central London where we are now. And this is New Broadcasting House, where I'm speaking to you from. And it's not so important perhaps for the centre of London, but it is when we're analysing war zones or what's happening in hard to reach places. And there's a story on the BBC website today. It's looking at Russian fortifications on the front lines in Ukraine, and you can read more about it there. And there are other ways that we also are able to interrogate what's going on, including on social media. I have some undercover accounts that I've set up for the BBC's Americast podcast, and we use these kinds of undercover accounts, and these are the characters that the accounts belong to be able to really understand polarization online and how what's happening on our social media.
So what you say? I'm a fake.
Recommended and pushed to us.
I'm fake. I'm lying. I'm deceiving people, right?
Totally, exhaustive.
But I'm going to root out this information through my deception.
Just how social media works. And then
insanity.
there's also investigating other mistruths and the real world harm they can cause. At the moment, I'm investigating the UK's conspiracy theory movement. I'm trying to understand more about how it's evolved and intensified since the pandemic here in the UK. I'm looking at the alternative media that finds itself at the heart of this movement, and a conspiracy theory newspaper that's a part of that as well. I'm looking at the way...
So you can go watch that if you want. She drones on about the way she's going to root out disinformation. Somebody sent me this morning. This is an interview from a website called Canadian Prepper, who interviewed a guy who's been involved in AI for about 40 years. And so here's the introductory clip. If you want to read the whole thing, go to Canadian Prepper's YouTube channel and watch this. But this is a warning that this guy is giving about AI. I've worked in the thing for 4 decades. Here's what you should watch for.
Sooner or later, these ChatGPTs will far surpass the human brain capacity. That's not just within our lifetimes, that's this decade. The AI-based arms race is just going to ratchet up and up and up. You're not going to stop it. Humanity will be asking, do we build gods or do we build our potential exterminators? Top priority is survival of the human species. We would be ants or mosquitoes to them. What is the risk that these creatures, for whatever reason, decide to get rid of humanity? They could, to prevent the possible death of billions of people.
So he goes, you can watch it. It's about 40 minutes long, and it's scary. I mean, because there's an arms race going on, and one of the things that's happened is that I think Ukraine has outperformed what they were really capable. Everybody thought they were capable of, in part because a lot of people who are pushing these artificial intelligence defense systems have run to Ukraine to try to get Ukraine to adopt them so they can get some real world data. But this is the Financial Times. Ukraine already sees a bright digital future. And there's been, there's that Ukraine 2030 video I've played a bunch of times. But this is what the battle for Bakhmut. This is Bakhmut, a sort of a city, not really strategic or anything significant other than that's where everybody was fighting in Ukraine. The city fell to the Russians last week. I think I have a little video. Here we go. Here's a drone video of, I think I found this at the New York Times or someplace website, showing what's happened to the city. There are estimates that there were up to 100,000 Ukrainians killed in the battle for Bakhmut. And this is the Russian strategy of war, is they just kind of grind you down. But the head of the Wagner mercenary group in Bakhmut came out and said that he lost 20,000, he had 20,000 men die under his command. Now, a lot of these were prisoners that were given the ability, like if you get out, you go help and survive, then your prison sentence is over. And so it was a meat grinder for both of them. And, I don't think Russia did particularly well, but you can see that Russia, they have this, one of their military doctrines is they just pound you to death with artillery. And the artillery can be just absolutely devastating. I have an article here. Hang on. So this is an article. This is from the New Yorker. By the way, let me go back. I want to say something about disinformation and AI that I didn't quite get in when I was talking about it before. So from Glenn Beck's website, 7 AI problems that he sees coming. And he's covering it very well. So I know that all the warnings, standard warnings would apply to his orientation. But 7 horrifying new AI technologies that are coming. AI brainwave monitoring. Earlier this year, the World Economic Forum's annual meeting, Nita Robinson, a professor of law and philosophy at Duke, presented a video that depicted a hypothetical situation where a person's brainwaves are monitored by their earbuds, which have the ability to record brainwaves, to code them with AI, and then send rain reports to their boss and are accessible by government agencies. When the video ends, Robinson makes the terrifying announcement that this AI technology already exists. It's just a matter of time before it's implemented everywhere. The next one is AI voice cloning. And you see this happening. People call up, they'll get you to say something on the phone, and they'll take that and they'll clone your voice. And then there are some banking systems that use your voice print, and they're able to use your voice print to access your financial information. You got to be really, really careful about what you open up. So you have Snapchat's new AI friend, the AI big brother. In a recent TED Talk, former Apple designer Imran Chaudhry introduced the concept for a new wearable AI device connected to a camera and microphone, enabling AI to hear and see everything you do. Chaudhry assures us that the device is privacy first and safe, but how safe would you feel with an all-seeing AI accompanying you every day? There's AI dating. I'm glad I'm done with that for many reasons. And then the one, AI meddling with elections. And there's a video, AI-generated image of Trump being arrested. It didn't happen this way, with police chasing him down the street. But people were tweeting it like it was very real. They had a problem earlier this week or last where there was an AI-generated video of the Pentagon on fire, and people started sharing it, but it didn't happen. But everybody thought, I got it sent to me by some people. Look at what's happening at the Pentagon. And it looks very real. And so this is, well, you're going to really need to be rock solid in your faith and anchored in your faith in the days, weeks, months, whatever we have left. It's going to be a problem. So, so that's one thing. Then there was one other thing I had on AI. Hang on a second here. I played the AI discussion, right? Okay, so back to Bakhmut. In the New Yorker, they have it's a magazine of the left, and this was published on May 22nd, 2023, to kind of give you an idea what happened in Bakhmut. And so their orientation probably would be pro-Ukrainian and that type of thing. But it was called Letter from Ukraine, written by Luke Mogelson. In the trenches in the Donbass, infantrymen face unprecedented horrors from missiles to grenades to helicopter fires. I'll just read you the first paragraph. Soldiers on the front of Ukraine adhere to a maxim that grows more sacrosanct the longer they survive. If you want to live, dig. In mid-March, I arrived at a small army position in the eastern region of the Donbass where shockwaves and shrapnel had reduced the surrounding trees to splintered canes. Artillery had churned up so much earth that you could no longer distinguish between craters in the natural topography. 8 infantrymen were rebuilding a machine gun nest that Russian shelling had obliterated the previous week, killing one of their comrades. A torn piece of a jacket from a separate blast hung on a branch high above us. A log-covered dugout where the soldiers slept was about 5 feet deep and not much wider. At the sound of a Russian helicopter, everyone squeezed inside. A direct hit from a mortar had charred the timber. And it goes on and on. I mean, it just talks about how horrible it's been for the people there in Bakhmut. And I think you could probably, if you got somebody embedded with the Russian soldiers, they would say the same thing. So it's this is the article that I was just reading from. So there's some other things going on in the Middle East and the world geopolitics I'm going to cover very quickly. There was a meeting of a group this week called the Eurasian Economic Forum. There you see Putin has trotted out one of his giant tables for everyone to sit around. And he's at this thing. There's not much sound here, so don't turn it up. But if you go to the videos, this thing goes on for like 8, 9, 10 hours, and he's there most of the time. So all this stuff you hear about, oh, he's near death and all this other stuff, I'm not buying it. I mean, I don't even know if he takes a bathroom break. If he does, it's cleverly off camera. So he goes here, naturally, this is one of the things he's saying in this speech, which is like hour and 50 minutes. You think I'm long? Give me control of an army and $1 billion home on the Black Sea, and I could go on for a while too. Naturally, we must make a coordinated effort to strengthen technological sovereignty and backbone industries of the economy and achieve genuine technological self-sufficiency. In practical terms, I suggest coordinating and implementing uniform priorities for technological transformation and innovation. This should allow our countries to avoid depending on foreign technology and companies in critical industries. So he goes on, they're trying to create, and they talk about creating a new world order that's different than what we've had. And they want to do economic cooperation and that sort of thing. He closes out the speech. The other thing he says here, he closes out the speech with this: I believe it is high time to develop the North-South Transport Corridor in conjunction with the Trans-Caspian route. In this context, Kazakhstan will serve as a reliable logistics hub of the Eurasian Economic Union using all of its capabilities and resources. And I think when you look at the way this Ezekiel 38 and 39 thing is configured, I think you got to factor in these stand republics. I think they're very important, and you see them coming together. Xi also appeared by video and spoke to the group. Let me. I feel like I'm cheating because I might get done earlier today. My wife's back there going, yay. So these videos were released. These are videos of Hezbollah conducting training exercises in Lebanon. And you can see that they're training, and they're very serious about their training. And they have arms, they have vehicles, they have drones. You can see they have rockets and launchers and that type of thing. So there's a big concern in Israel that they're going to launch something in the very near future. And part of it, they have motorcycles and that type of thing. And some of these guys, look at some of the size of the arms on a few of these guys. They're training, and what they want to do is they want to come across the border, kidnap people, take them, hold them hostage, and then just fire thousands and thousands of rockets and overwhelm the system and cause Israel a lot of problem. And Israel, I think, sort of acknowledges that if this happens, this is going to be a problem. They will overwhelm Iron Dome. They're trying to come up with things. There's a great article by Jonathan Spire a week ago, Friday, in the Jerusalem Post about that. Look at what's going on. Look at the way these negotiations are going. There are reports out now that the United States is saying, Israel, we want to help you achieve normalization with Saudi Arabia, but you have to give up, you have to start negotiations with the Palestinians again, and you have to give up land and that type of thing. And so our government's trying to push Israel into this. In the opening part of this article, Jonathan Spire says, the issue of Yemen constituted a key litmus test in the recently concluded rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia since the launch of the Houthis' bid for power in 2014 and the Saudi intervention to prevent the strategic disaster of a pro-Iran force upon the choke point of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, that's over on the Red Sea. Yemen has formed the main battlefront between Riyadh and Tehran. 150,000 have been killed, including 15,000 civilians. So they're looking at this, and he's looking at it and says, it's not, you look at this and you're wondering, like, what's Israel supposed to do? How are they supposed to react? And the way things are going with Yemen and Saudi Arabia and Iran kind of getting along is a problem. And despite the deal, the U.S. comes out and says, well, Iran's still smuggling weapons into Yemen because this is the way the Iranians do things and negotiate. Israel has come out and said, listen, we're ready to go to war if we have to. Here is a part of a speech by the head of the Israeli Defense Force at the Herzliya conference this week from Reichman University in Israel. It's about a 5-minute clip. This is a translation because he spoke in Hebrew. But I want you to listen to what he says because he's putting in the context the potential conflict between Israel and Iran.
This conference, when we have more increasing uncertainty, the vision and strategy must be very, very clear.
Can you turn it up, guys?
We must use this to understand that we need larger margins of security. When we look at the powers, we see increasing competition, especially between China and the States. And we see China having wills here too to have more of their influence and more at our part of the world. We see Iran not a superpower, but a big country indeed. I will talk about it soon. Iran is in competition with civilizations. A very important book that was written at the end of the 80s, Huntington, The Clash of Civilizations. It's not a war against Israel, but not against the US, but rather against the West in its entirety and the presence of its values here in the Middle East. We see a war being waged in the world that many people thought such wars will not happen again in this area, the war between Russia and Ukraine. And I would like to mention 2 lessons taken from there that are, I believe, are very relevant for us as well. One is about modern warfare. Russia entered Ukraine as the 20th century militaries entered, and they met a decentralized powers as enemies are being, as foes are being deployed in 21st century. So this clash created a very interesting situation and a lot of advantages for the decentralized foe. And I will talk about it when I talk about the multi-annual plans. The IDF needs to build itself in such a way that we'll be able to deal with decentralized foes in the modern warfare of the 21st century. And at the continuation of this talk, I would also draw in broad lines how should such warfare look like.
He goes on to talk about the fact that if you're playing tennis and you got one person on the other side of the net, it's kind of easy. But if you're one person and you're playing against 5 or 6, it becomes more complex. And so Israel's trying to decide what to do. Can they fight against this? And what can they do? Now, there's a question. Netanyahu, I think I said I was going to play this, and I don't see that I put the video in. Well, I'll play it next week. I talked about this in the first hour, that in response to Mahmoud Abbas and that type of thing, Israel's cabinet met in the Western Wall tunnels adjacent to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem this week. And they were doing this to send a message to Mahmoud Abbas and all the pro-Palestinian people that, listen, there is a Jewish history here, and it predates you by thousands of years. So stop with this nonsense. Now, they'll deny that it took place. The people at the UN will deny that there was ever an Israeli presence. Nasrallah, he'll get on his, he'll get on his channel up in Lebanon, and he'll talk about the fact that, Israel, you're threatening war against us. It's really the other way around. We're going to war with you. And so at some point, this is going to break loose, and it's going to be a problem. So whatever you've seen with the disruption caused by Gaza is just a very small snippet of what's going to happen when this thing really breaks loose. Iran came out this week, and they had this video that they released from the Iranian Ministry of Defense. It's a new missile. It's a ballistic missile, and it's capable of going 2,000 kilometers, which is, guess what, just about the distance from parts of Iran to Israel. And they said, well, we could go further, but we're going to limit it to 2,000 kilometers because that's what we're going to do. And so they're threatening Israel. And again, they release these videos all the time. And the question becomes, how far advanced are they in their nuclear program? And how far does Israel let them go before they do something about it? And how capable is Israel of doing it if they have to act alone? I don't know that the United States will go do it. They have a bunch of F-35s, and they have some old refuelers, but I don't know how of a sustained campaign they could make with aircraft. They might have to use missiles or something else. The missile that Iran did is called the Kibar, best known for a fierce battle between the army of the Prophet Muhammad and Jewish tribes. And when they made the announcement, the head of the Iranian defense, this was the backdrop. Now, I will say that clearly that's the Dome of the Rock, model of the Dome of the Rock there next to the missile. And one can hope that maybe that's what gets embedded in their targeting this missile. And that solves a lot of problems with rebuilding a temple and that type of thing. Back in the Gulf War, when those Scuds were coming in from Iraq, Scuds, S-C-U-D, sure could use direction. There were reports that Orthodox Jews were running to the Temple Mount, to the Western Wall, and praying that one of those Scuds would hit that gold dome up there and solve a lot of people's problems. And we know that that's coming. So I'm going to try to put in this video from, excuse me one moment. Okay. So here's a video. This is the cabinet meeting that took place in the Western Wall tunnels. It wasn't on the under the Temple Mount. It was in the area adjacent to the Temple Mount. There we go. And you'll hear Netanyahu, a translation of Netanyahu, in just a moment. So it goes back. This was to celebrate the 56th anniversary of the Six-Day War victory. Remember them going to the Temple Mount, taking back the Temple Mount for the first time. It was big Flag Day celebrations. Of course, this is always a flashpoint. These are Muslim prayers that take place with some regularity. Here's the Israeli cabinet. They have more people in their cabinet than we do, and this is the meeting that they had. And here's Netanyahu.
Several days ago, Mahmoud Abbas told the UN that the Jewish people have no links to the Temple Mount and that Eastern Jerusalem is part of the Palestinian Authority. Therefore, he should pay attention. Today we are holding a special cabinet meeting in honor of Jerusalem Day at the foot of the Temple Mount upon which King Solomon built the first temple of the Jewish people. And once again, Abbas should pay attention. The heart of the historical state of Israel, the city of David, and has been here for 3,000 years. The deep ties between the Jewish people and Jerusalem is one that has no parallel among the nations. Jerusalem was our capital around 1,100 years before London became the capital of England, approximately 1,800 years before Paris became the capital of France, and around 2,800 years before Washington, D.C. became the capital of the U.S. For over 100 generations, Jews expressed their special yearning for Jerusalem in prayers that are repeated 3 times a day and under every wedding canopy.
Netanyahu went on to highlight that while Jerusalem has long been reunited, the battle over the holy city has not yet ceased.
56 years ago, in the Six-Day War, we unified Jerusalem. But I must say that the fight for its unity has not ended. Time and again, my friends and I have been forced to repel international pressure on the part of those who would divide Jerusalem again, and by prime ministers of Israel who were prepared to give in to those pressures, and were even prepared to concede the Jewish people's holiest places. We have acted differently. Not only have we not divided Jerusalem, we have built and expanded it. I am proud to have had the great privilege of building new neighborhoods in Jerusalem, such as Har Homa, Givat Hamatos, and Malei Hazaidim, in which tens of thousands of Israelis live. We did all this together in the face of great international pressure. We stood against these pressures.
So let me finish up with this. So we talk about this coming temple. There's a good article I would recommend you look up on i24news.com, or I'm sorry, i24news.tv. And I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs of this because I just find it very interesting. We talk about a coming temple, and how does that come about? And are there anybody planning to do it? Well, the Temple Institute has plans. I've shown you videos of those plans. I've shown you videos where, they're talk about the children are waiting, and in the background you can see the temple under construction, that type of thing. So here's an article published May 17th by Uri Shapira, titled "The Architect and Activist Who Want to Build Jerusalem's Third Temple." Acclaimed architect Chaim Dotan and scholar activist Hillel Weiss proposal meant to build Jerusalem, the temple city, and the road to peace. It's very interesting, the language that they're using here when you put it in the Bible prophecy context. Chaim Dotan, an acclaimed architect who has won several international awards and also serves as a professor of architecture at leading institutes in China, recently became involved in the ambitious project of designing the third Jewish temple in Jerusalem. Known for his extravagant projects such as the Grand Canyon Glass Bridge in China, renowned as the tallest glass-bottom bridge in the world, Dotan last year joined the right-wing activist and literature scholar Professor Hillel Weiss and pitched a session of the Jerusalem International Conference titled "From the Umbilicus Mundi to the Four Corners of the Earth and Back." The conference, scheduled to take place this summer in Jerusalem, will be organized by the Yad Ben Zvi Institute, a prestigious research center in Israel. Dotan's pitch, Building Jerusalem, the Temple City and the Road to Peace, was divided into 3 sections. The first was dedicated to the transportation and economy of the future Temple City of the Israeli capital. The next pitch, entitled From Vision to Practice, described future plans for the Jerusalem of the Third Temple era inspired by biblical sources. In the center of the plan, an open structure will be built above the old city of Jerusalem. It will be shaped like a tent, a cloud, or a mountain. 6 or 8 bridges will connect constructive towers, which will combine stairways and elevators supporting Upper Jerusalem, the outline seen by I-24 News stated. A copy of the sketch also showed a cylinder-shaped structure connected by bridges. The Institute would not let the paper be published. In response, Weiss said, "I think we are considered a threat to the idea of internationalization of Jerusalem and all kind of interreligious or anti-religious plans regarding the city." Plans to rebuild the Third Jewish Temple on the Temple Mount are not new, but have mostly faced strong resistance. Weiss himself was once a member of the Sanhedrin organization, a small body that aims to build a UN-like body based on Jewish Torah law. Very interesting. If you remember, I showed you, this is at, I think, Lambert Dolphin's website. Actually, this is an old article from a few years ago in Tablet. And by the way, Tablet magazine, you can go look it up, has a very good series of articles this week on Saudi Arabia and how what the situation with Saudi Arabia is and how it relates to Israel. I'll talk about that more in another update. But this was the thing, a case for building a synagogue on the Temple Mount. It's being talked about. And now you have people that are drafting plans and concepts and that type of thing. At Lambert Dolphin's TempleMount.org website, I've showed you pictures of this before, and it's about a temple for all nations that they want to have. And you can see that what they do is they take the existing Dome of the Rock and they make 8 wings out of it. And the wings are for Christianity and mystical Christianity. Well, here's a little closer up. So you have Islam and Islamic mysticism. You have Christianity and Christian mysticism. You have Hinduism and Hindu mysticism, Buddhism. And then you have Judaism there on the right and Jewish mysticism. And so this is some of the concepts that people are talking about building the temple there. And I'm just saying, as I know all the things that are going to happen with the temple, I'm just telling you that there are people that are talking about it and publishing things, and it made its way into a fairly mainstream website, I-24 News, this week. And they were one of the people the host of the media conference were people from I-24 News. So very interesting times to be alive. So anyway, look, I know it's a little earlier than usual, but I'm going to terminate this. Now listen, so listen, I'm not ill, okay? I'm not dying or anything like that. I'm just getting done a little bit sooner. And now the peanut gallery, can you make pot roast every Sunday? So it'd be fine with me, somebody's got to step up and do that. So listen, we live in very interesting times. If you want, I preached first hour, talked about Peter's second sermon at Pentecost, but I think it does play into end-time Bible prophecy quite a bit. I think there is a very strong connection there. At least I tried to make the case for it, and we'll see how this all works out. Things are happening very, very rapidly, and you need to be prepared in your heart, in your mind, share the gospel with people whenever you have a chance, And if you're thinking about it, you need to make some efforts, I think, to prepare physically, because I think we're entering a period of time where economic, food, and other things are going to be very problematic in the near term. So let's pray and we'll leave. Lord, thank you so much for this day. We pray that you'll bless us as we leave this week. We pray that you will always help us to be people that stand firm in the faith and always ready to meet the Lord, however that's going to happen, and also to be ready to give a defense for the hope that lies within us and to share the gospel with those around us. Bless us this week. In Jesus' name, amen.